belastet me.
Keep its head, and I will let you live.
Let me handle this.
So much is here. Our scouts are dead. It is lost. Run for
The
your
rest of your legion has been destroyed, Outbreak.
Monday, August 25th, near Willow Creek. Finally, a break from this incessant marching. We have been on the move since first light, and the men are becoming weary from the difficult trek through these dense woods. Kruniak, our commander, insists we keep these pauses to a minimum if we are to reach the town of Willow Creek before midday. It was only yesterday that we entered the town of Tallow, seeking rest after a month spent patrolling the southern reaches of the Wild River. But our respite was cut short when the mayor beseeched us to investigate reports of grave robbing around the villages just north of Forest Heart. Kruniak, who seems to be more interested in political maneuvers than military ones, agreed to look into the matter. I am sure it will prove to be yet another unfounded rumor, no doubt caused by wild dogs searching for their evening meal in the newly turned earth of a graveyard. Alas, that is the life of a soldier these days, chasing hoodlums and thieves and making sure the nobility get their due. I have only a few moments before I must go. Columns of black smoke have been spotted rising above the woods between us and Willow Creek. Our commander is rallying the troops for the final leg of our morning journey. Monday, August 25th, Willow Creek. I can hardly believe what I have just witnessed. As we approached the village of Willow Creek, we saw what appeared to be a band of ruffians terrorizing the peasantry. If only it had been so. We rushed to the fray and were able to save a handful of people from the wretched claws of the walking dead. Although many of the surviving townsfolk fled the area, those that remained were intent on seeing to our needs and mending our wounds. One man said he was tending his livestock when he saw creatures spill out from an overgrown trail that leads to an ancient nearby cemetery. Another villager, a small girl not yet old enough for the fields, said that she had seen brigands take her father and a few others in the direction of that trail. Kruniak immediately sent scouts to scour the area near the trail for the missing villagers. They returned just before sundown to tell us there were some men holding captives at the cemetery. Upon hearing the news, the survivors begged us to help free their kinsmen. We take our leave in a few minutes. Tuesday, August 26th, between Tallow and Willow Creek. With no small risk to ourselves, we managed to rescue the villagers from certain death. The endless rain and nightmarish parade of living corpses has left an indelible imprint of the events of yesterday on my mind. As we hurried back to Willow Creek, Rurik, one of the village leaders, demanded to be taken to see the mayor of Tallow. When questioned, he offered us little, save that he had important information about the recent grave robberies. Rurik is well respected by the townspeople, so Kruniak chose not to press him further for information. Willow Creek was attacked repeatedly last night. Kruniak stationed archers on the perimeter of the town, and the bowmen were able to pick off the stumbling corpsemen as they approached. But there seemed to be no end to them. We have even seen soulless and ghouls skulking about on the outskirts of town. All of us are beginning to worry, including Kruniak. When we departed, the commander left a handful of men to protect the village. The rest of us are headed to Tallow with Rurik. Tuesday, September 2nd, near Braille. When we reached Tallow, Rurik told the mayor he had overheard the brigands speaking of taking corpses to a castle near the town of Braille. Indeed, the locals we encountered on the way said they had seen many wagons filled with bodies being hauled into the keep. The master of this castle is Baron Kildare. We were joined at Tallow by reinforcements to attack the Baron's stronghold and put an end to his unwholesome trade in human remains. This evening at our camp just outside the keep, I was awakened by a low rumbling. We watched in helpless silence as a massive army of thrall, 10 abreast and 100 deep, marched out of the main gate heading south. Kruniak fears their destination is Tallow and has sent a runner to warn the town. I cannot help but feel somewhat relieved. We should meet little or no resistance tomorrow instead of facing hundreds upon hundreds of thrall. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for Tallow. Tuesday, September 2nd, the Keep. Kruniak is more competent in military matters than I had given him credit for. Enlisting the help of Yari, a dwarven pathfinder, to infiltrate the keep and lower the drawbridge was inspired. I have a newfound respect for the man. But our job here has just begun. We must find the Baron. Only then will his army of the dead be put to rest. Kruniak is nothing if not full of surprises. No sooner had I touched pen to paper in praise of the man than he fell upon one of the captured guards, nearly strangling him to death. I was mortified, but when Kruniak released the fellow, he seemed to awaken as if from a deep slumber. The commander had broken the enchantment that had bound the guard. The guard told us that a few years ago, the Baron had several secret passages constructed so that he could make a quick escape if his safety was ever compromised. Kruniak has sent in a small group of men to hunt down the Baron. He has positioned men at the main entrance to the keep in case the Baron manages to get past them. If the Baron tries to leave through this entrance, he will be killed where he stands. Should he make it to one of the secret exits, though, I doubt we would be able to find him in this wild land. Monday, September 15th, Gonen's Bridge. Leave it for the torches, lads, and make haste for Gonen. Kruniak's words soon spread through the entire camp, and men began hurrying in all directions. Moments before, the runner sent to warn Tallow had returned, only to tell us that Tallow, along with every other village and town along the northern border of Forest Heart, had been ravaged by the undead. Even worse, the enemy is amassing a huge army less than a day's march from here. Kruniak believes they are coming to recapture the keep. The commander has sent me and a group of dwarves ahead of our main force to stuff Gonen like a turkey. I was unsure of his meaning until we reached Gonen's bridge, and the dwarves began to load the bridge with satchel charges. Apparently, he plans to destroy the bridge behind us once we are all across, to make pursuit more difficult. Kruniak and some other men stayed behind to put the keep to the torch, thus preventing it from falling back into the hands of the enemy. As we began our ascent into the foothills of the Cloudspine, I turned back and saw the blaze well underway. And that is when I noticed movement around the keep. I thought I knew what fear was, or that I had known fear. I was wrong. This night I have experienced true fear. The army of the dark is upon us, and it has no end. They march toward us shoulder to shoulder for as far as the eye can see. The very earth must be crying out at the damnable weight of them. Wednesday, September 17th, Plain of Scales. Kruniak is dead. Our Sergeant Garrick says he saw the commander and half of the color guard running like hell back through the lines, ordering a general retreat. When Garrick caught up with him, Kruniak collapsed. He had been holding his guts in with his shield. Kruniak's last words were of the bravery of the color guard, who had given their lives trying to save him, even as Soul Blighter had delivered the killing blow. Soul Blighter. I have not heard that name since the days of my youth, when my grandfather would tell me stories of the Great War. According to legend, Soul Blighter was killed in the last battle of that war, when Balor's severed head was thrown into the Great Devoid and the armies of the dead collapsed. But after the horrors I have witnessed so far, no tale is too terrible to be believed. And if Soul Blighter is alive, and the minions of the dark have risen to do his bidding, the events of the last few weeks begin to make sense. All of us agree we must reach Madrigal and King Ulrich soon, but it would take months to get to Madrigal on foot. Garrick believes there is a world knot directly west of us on the other side of the Cloudspine. Although it was destroyed during the Great War, the dwarves seem confident they will be able to repair it. This I will have to see for myself. As we were breaking camp, Garrick handed me a journal he had recovered from Kruniak's belongings. The commander must have taken it from one of the Baron's libraries. What significance it may have had to Kruniak, I do not know, other than it appears to have been written by a man who served in the Legion during the Great War. Tuesday, September 23rd, Madrigal. Word was sent to King Ulrich within moments of our arrival through the World Knot, and before an hour had passed we were brought before the throne. King Ulrich listened intently as Garrick recounted the events leading up to our arrival in Madrigal. As soon as Garrick was done, King Ulrich ordered the 7th Legion through the World Knot to Scales. They have been instructed to seek out Soul Blighter's army and destroy it now, before it grows any larger. King Ulrich is convinced that Soul Blighter is searching for a man known as the Summoner. He says that the birth of a man who would resurrect the Mircridia and visit horrors on the world without equal in history or myth had been foretold in an ancient tome called the Total Codex. All that we know of the Mircridia comes from old songs and half-forgotten legends. They are full of horrifying tales of whole armies being devoured and entire cities being erased from the world. They were eventually defeated by the hero Connaught, who imprisoned them in a powerful artifact called the Tame. King Ulrich says we must travel through the World Knot to Covenant and retrieve the Total Codex from the newly rebuilt library. He says that with the Codex we may be able to find the Summoner before Soul Blighter can. According to the journal, a similar expedition was undertaken during the Great War. It seems ironic that 60 years later we will be going through the same World Knot to retrieve the Codex once again. Friday, October 10th, Madrigal. Soul Blighter cannot be stopped. His armies foul the lands south of us for 500 miles, and his search for the summoner has left none alive within his reach. The cities of Scales, Covenant, and Tyr have all fallen to him in the last 3 weeks. It seems that too many years of peace have softened the once legendary armies of the West. Rabican, Mergen, and Maelden have been dead 60 years, and today only Ulrich remains of the great leaders who defeated the fallen lords. Survivors reached us from the garrison at Tyr today, confirming the city's destruction. One among them told us of being captured and dragged before a woman so disfigured by injury and age that he turned from her repulsed. In a rage, she gouged out his eyes and shrieked, "Tell Ulrich his nightmare has just begun," and released him to stumble out of the conquered city. I believe something about the message has unsettled our king. Today he sent what is left of our army north to the city of Tandem. Their instructions were to gather as many able-bodied men as they could along the way and wait for him in Tandem. King Ulrich is staying in Madrigal with a mere handful of men in order to make sure that no one is left behind. Only then will he withdraw from the city. With everything else that's happened in the last couple of months, snow this early in the year is hardly worthy of note. At the moment it isn't coming down hard enough to impede Soulblighter's advance on Madrigal. But there's always hope. Sunday, November 16th, near White Falls. Our deepest fears have been realized. Soulblighter has found the summoner, and through him has unleashed the Mircridia on the world. They are nightmare made flesh. Even men hardened by combat cowered in miserable terror at first sight of them. We suffered appalling losses getting His Majesty safely on board the Vigilance. Not a single man from the outer guard made it to the ship. By the time we were safely away, the dock was so thick with soulless you could hardly discern where one ended and the next began. We fell silent as their ranks parted to make room for a grotesque crone who hurled obscenities more vicious than any poisoned barb. Upon seeing her, the king turned to us and said, "Shiver is a formidable opponent, and it is unlikely that she will fall for the same trick twice." I believe I have read of this in the journal. Shiver was defeated at Madrigal by her own vanity, thanks to advice given by the still living head of one of the fallen lord's old enemies. I wonder where the head is now. We could certainly use the help. We made haste toward Tandem, our rallying point. Tandem is the cornerstone of the free cities of the north, and the key to Tandem is White Falls. So we will sail up the meander and secure the fortress there. We cannot allow Shiver to cross the meander. Doing so would mean the destruction of Tandem, and no one will remain to stand against the dark. Sunday, November 30th, the Ermine. After the Great War, the armies of the Dark collapsed, and the fallen lords were swallowed up by history. We believed we had entered a golden age, a new era of peace, and our armies laid down their weapons to begin the long task of rebuilding the world. For 60 years we worked our fields and tended our cattle and did all the things that we had fought to defend, until the war became something that fathers told their sons and grandfathers their grandchildren. But 60 years is nothing to the likes of a fallen lord, and while King Ulrich was restoring the province to its former glory, Soulblighter was plotting its infinite ruin. The king has decided to fight fire with fire. He seeks Myrddrid, an avatar of the Wolf Age, whom Balor renamed the Deceiver after bending him to his will. Although the Deceiver fought alongside Balor during the last war, he held no great love for the rest of the fallen, nearly being killed by the Watcher in a legendary battle at Seven Gates. King Ulrich believes the Deceiver still lives, and is counting on this old rivalry to lure him into joining our efforts to destroy Soul Blighter and the Mircridia. The king has sent word to 12-motion Jewel Skull, a journeyman who served under him during his campaigns east of the Cloudspine, in hopes that he has some knowledge of what became of the Deceiver after Balor's destruction. A select group of men from the Legion, myself included, has been sent to rendezvous with 12-motion at the Stair of Grief. We have decided to go through the Ermine, the homeland of our fur-bolg allies. Though the forest seems to be a continuous thicket, we have made good time. Night has fallen, and we have pitched our camp. Time to pick the brambles out of my bootlaces, and then to sleep. At dawn, we begin our march anew. Monday, December 22nd, Theomir's Gorge, the Stair of Grief. Until this afternoon, the winter had been very mild, almost an extension of autumn. But now the sleet, snow, and fearsome winds make our ascent up the Stair of Grief extremely treacherous. Even worse, we are not alone. Our scouts report seeing terrifying shapes lurking about, masked by the foul weather. Etri and his men have been preparing ambush sites throughout the pass for the better part of the day. 12-motion Jewel Skull says he was last here 60 years ago, fighting alongside the likes of Durak and Turgeis with burning steel. They caught the Deceiver and the remnants of his army in this very defile, and here destroyed them. Today the Dramus River is frozen solid, but back then it was a muddy torrent of melted snow and ice brought on by the eruption of Tharsis. The Deceiver was plunged into the river and swept far downstream, his scepter sinking to the bottom. I asked 12-motion why King Ulrich believes the Deceiver will throw in with our lot. He explained how the Deceiver has been frozen in a half-death beneath the river, clinging to life through sorcery alone, with no power left to free himself. The king believes that if we were to revive him and return the scepter, the focus of his power, he would no doubt join our cause. Though our numbers are few, we will guard the pass against Soul Blighter's hordes. It is inevitable that we will be forced to fall back toward the Dramus as the enemy advances, but we must give 12-motion enough time to recover the Deceiver's scepter. Saturday, January 10th, Angkor Vadal Glacier, the Cloudspine. As soon as 12-motion Jewel Skull pried the Deceiver's scepter from the Dramus's icy clutches, we fled the Stair of Grief and headed north in search of the man himself. Still this accursed storm rages, killing as surely as a thrall's axe or a Mircridia's claws. Riftir's death brings our losses from the storm to 3. Our scouts have brought back news of an odd group of men who have gathered nearby. From their description alone, 12-motion recognized them as warlocks from the Sholomance, ancient allies of the Deceiver and collaborators of the Fallen Lords. If they are on the glacier, then so is the Deceiver. The enemy is still close at our heels. We all wonder how they have been able to pursue us despite the horrendous weather and the best efforts of our scouts to conceal our tracks. Perhaps they were drawn to something other than us. Does Soul Blighter seek to enlist the aid of yet another of his former allies? It seems unlikely, once you consider the intense hatred the rest of the Fallen Lords had for the Deceiver. Only Balor seemed capable of holding them together, and even he was not always successful. Many stories from the Great War tell of open discord between the Fallen Lords. Now we will take advantage of it. We have devised a plan for the Berserks to lead our pursuers directly into the Warlock's clutches. We should be able to sneak in and revive the Deceiver during the ensuing chaos. It has been nearly a month since we left King Ulrich and the rest of the Legion at White Falls. I can only imagine the terrible battle that must have been waged there in our absence. Sunday, February 1st, the 12 Duns, south of Rionen. The Deceiver is deranged. Of this I am absolutely convinced. He he has brought us here, to the 12 Duns, closer to the Trough The Ermine than any sane man has dared in 2 generations. We are a mere 4 hours' march from the lost city of Rionen. The Deceiver claims to be held in high regard by the Trough as a being of furor poeticus. He has told us of their battles against the Mercridia, and believes he can win the Trough to our cause. Apparently, the Trough are not convinced that our race is worth fighting for, but they have agreed to do battle with Soulblighter for 1 year if we can defeat them in a game of their devising. The Trough have placed 6 flags on the field, and if we can control the majority at the end of a period of time that they deem fair, they will assist us. To wit, we shall send forth our best warriors to do battle with the Trough. Thursday, February 26th, Outer Walls of Muirthemne. Today, after more than 2 months of separation, we have finally rejoined the rest of the Legion. I will not even hazard to guess the thoughts of those who first sighted the mighty Trough accompanying our force. After we settled in, Garrick told us of events in the west. Shiver's attack on White Falls came as expected, and the battle there raged for the better part of a month, until Beolden and the 7th Legion swept up from the south and attacked Shiver's flank. Her army was forced to retreat east toward Willow, and the combined forces under Ulrich and Beolden fell upon her rear guard, destroying it utterly. The victory was short-lived, however, as Shiver returned a week later with an army of Mercridia. This time we were pushed across the meander, and now Tandem's fall is inevitable. So the king has decided on a new course of action. The Legion must capture Muirthemne, though for what purpose we cannot tell, for the city holds no strategic benefits. King Ulrich himself plans to be here within the week, and we must capture the city before he arrives. Our scouts have returned from the city proper, bearing grim news. The Shade Herod and a great number of Fetch and Mercridia are occupying the old armory just inside the city walls. Tomorrow we lay siege to Muirthemne with the aid of the Trough and a team of dwarven mortars. Breaching the massive wall that protects the old armory is foremost on our list of objectives. While that curtain stands, our infantry is but grist for the mill. Friday, February 27th, Muirthemne. 110 years ago, during the Wolf Age, Muirthemne was sacked, burned, and all but buried under a mountain of rock and sand by Balor and the fallen lords. As I stood before the ruins of the mausoleum of the Cath Bruig, I could not help but wonder what we had hoped to gain by owning it. All was made clear when King Ulrich arrived today and revealed his intentions. Once we have recovered the Ibis Crown, he declared, Llancarvan will once more be the seat of the Cath Bruig Empire, with myself as emperor. The people will draw strength from me, and we will go forth and strike down our enemies. Once they have been defeated, we will rebuild the empire to its former glory. Legend states that whoever wears the Ibis Crown has at his disposal truly staggering power. Such was the artifact's power that Sir Soren, at fantastic expense, commissioned 11 ordinary copies of the thing to be made in order to make theft of the true crown more difficult. When Muirthemne fell to the fallen lords, the crown was nowhere to be found. King Ulrich believes it was secreted away in the catacombs below the mausoleum of the Cath Bruig. Knowing that entering the haunted crypt is tantamount to a death sentence, the king has called for volunteers. Though willing, I will not be going below to help find the crown. Instead, I will be traveling south to Forest Heart to search for another relic, the Tain. Monday, March 2nd, Muirthemne. The events I am about to relate occurred just a few days after my departure to Forest Heart. In the interest of historical accuracy, I have inserted these pages in my journal to acknowledge this important moment in time. After the Ibis Crown was recovered from the ancient tomb below Muirthemne, a ceremony was held to coronate Ulrich as the new emperor of the Cathbruic Empire. The journeyman, after 100 years of self-imposed penance for being absent during the fall of the city, threw down the gold tiles that hung around their necks and swore fealty to the new emperor. The journeymen were no more. The Heron Guard were reborn. Hours later, Muirthemne was overrun by Mircridia, and the Heron Guard were given their chance at redemption. Sunday, April 19th, Forest Heart. The old journal records that during the Great War, Soul Blighter trapped the Legion inside an artifact called the Tain. After 2 days of searching, the Avatar Emergen discovered a secret exit. At the cost of his own life, he was able to free the Legion by shattering the Tain from within. When Soul Blighter fled after the Tain was destroyed, he must have taken some part of it with him, knowing that even a tiny fraction of the artifact would be useful in the future. Fate alone kept him from getting a 60-year head start on us. Had the Summoner been born during that earlier age, final victory would have belonged to the fallen lords. King Ulrich has sent us with the Deceiver to find a piece of the shattered Tain. Once found, the Deceiver will lead us through its broken passages to find the Summoner and cut off Soul Blighter's access to the Mircridia. We have been looking for almost a week now, without luck. There are those among us who feel that we are wasting precious time and manpower, that it will never be found. The Deceiver has no such doubts. He says he can feel it calling to him. Monday, April 20th, inside the Tain. Once we were inside the Tain, the Deceiver explained its importance and what we must do here. I must admit I was somewhat distracted, however. This place is wholly outside of my experience. The air is cool and very dry and has a metallic taste. There are sections of cave wall that merge seamlessly with emptiness. Looking into these voids brings on feelings of nausea, and I cannot shake the feeling that we are being watched. The Tain was supposed to be the final resting place of the Mircridia, but the Summoner has been inside the shattered artifact for 5 months now, slowly resurrecting their entire race. To think of it makes me shudder. And even now the Mircridia spread across the province like fire across a dry field, leaving death and blackened ruins in their wake. We must stop him now. By all accounts, Soul Blighter butchered the entire population of Strand looking for the Summoner. How he knew where to look for him, or even how, is unclear. It is obvious that Soul Blighter did not have access to the Total Codex. If he did, it would have led him right to the man. Instead, he tortured and killed nearly every living soul within 3 weeks' travel of that ill-fated city before finding him. The Deceiver has brought us here to kill the Summoner. The ruin he will bring about if allowed to remain alive is unconscionable. This alone dictates that he must die. Tuesday, April 21st, Soul Blighter's camp west of the Cloudspine. Deranged, arrogant, self-serving, none of these words can fully describe the Deceiver. No wonder his army has always been made up of bewitched men and the walking dead. No thinking being would willingly follow him. The Deceiver dropped us in the middle of Soul Blighter's camp, hoping to attack him by surprise. King Ulrich said nothing of a sneak attack before we left Muirthemne. It is obvious the Deceiver was acting on his own. We were captured instantly and thrown into rude cells with other prisoners from some unsung battle in the west. The Deceiver was caught in the claw of some elemental beast commanded by Soul Blighter, but not before he had struck down more than a dozen of the enemy with his magic. We have been in prison for only 9 hours, but already can tell that something is afoot. The whole camp is alive with activity, and even our guards seem preoccupied with some greater purpose. According to the men captured before us, Shiver has returned after crushing all resistance in the west. Perhaps Soul Blighter now seeks to recapture Muirthemne. If we cannot devise a plan to free ourselves soon, there will be no one left to carry it out. Many of our comrades have been beaten, stripped, and dragged away. We hear them being tortured, and their screams of agony are slowly eroding our morale. The longer we wait, the more difficult it will be just to escape, let alone free the Deceiver. I have yet to mention our jailer. It is the devil Fellet, the shade who decimated Avon's Grove during the Great War. It is a wonder he has not yet sought vengeance upon us, as he was sorely injured by the Deceiver upon our arrival. Tuesday, April 21st, near Soul Blighter's camp, west of the Cloudspine. We are free, but not out of danger. In the confusion of the prison break, we stumbled upon some sort of assembly area. There are veritable mountains of satchel charges sagging under their own weight, presumably brought down from Stonheim. The putrid carcasses of whites, harvested for their baneful polyps and tumors, are strewn everywhere. Cleavers, axes, and twisted bits of razor-sharp metal fill barrel after barrel and litter the ground. I shudder to think of the destruction Soul Blighter must have in mind. But now that destruction will be wrought on his own army. We will cause as much damage as we can, and then head south to Scales, or possibly to Seven Gates. Traveling through the Tain Shard has left us at a loss as to exactly where in the world we are. The only thing we know for sure is that we are to the west of the Cloudspine. Thursday, April 23rd, Lesotho Dam. This morning we met up with a scouting party from the Legion, about a half-day's march south of Silver Mines. The Deceiver boasted of his victory over Soul Blighter, clutching a mangled crow and claiming to have captured a part of the murder, crippling his former ally. The scouts told us that Ulrich and nearly 3,000 men from the Legion have come from Muirthemne to face Soul Blighter. Unfortunately, they were met by Shiver and her army in the valley about 2 hours downstream from the dam. If the dam were destroyed, the resulting deluge would kill everything in its path for miles. Upon hearing this, the Deceiver shook his head, his face twisting in anger. He moved slowly through the crowd, commanding all those present to defend the dam, insisting that he would punish those who allowed it to fall. Without another word, he headed downstream. I asked one of the Black Robes why the Deceiver had not stayed to help us, and he tersely replied, "He goes to warn the Emperor, moving through odd angles faster than any man, and if unobserved, much faster than that. If we fail, and Soul Blighter destroys the dam, the Legion will be slaughtered with no chance to defend itself." Saturday, April 25th, south of Silver Mines. Still, Shiver stands between us and Soul Blighter, just as she did 2 days ago on the Ire River. The men who fought there faced an army of thrall meant more as an impediment than anything else. Did Soul Blighter plan to wash both the Legion and Shiver out to sea? Truly there is no end to the fiend's malfeasance. Ulrich was able to repel Shiver's attack and push her all the way to the broken lands south of Silvermines. But there was never an opportunity to strike at her directly. We will resolve that within hours. The Deceiver has been screaming for Shiver's blood all day. Ulrich has chosen 5 men of unwavering courage to accompany the Deceiver into the labyrinth of ravines where she hides. There they will hunt her down and destroy her. With Shiver gone, Ulrich and the rest of us will attempt to outflank Soul Blighter and pin him against the Cloudspine. Saturday, April 25th, the foot of Tharsis. The tales of Ulrich's swordsmanship cannot begin to describe what I have just witnessed. He possesses the sword Balmung and wields it with such skill that the magics contained therein spring forth to strike his enemies down. In this man, Soul Blighter has truly met his match. The whole of the Legion has been steeling itself for this, the final confrontation with Soul Blighter. He is cornered and desperate, making the fight that much more terrible. We engaged his main force 2 days ago, and have been pushing it back toward the Cloudspine ever since. Our casualties number nearly half of our force, but it is certain that we have inflicted far greater damage than we received. We have Soul Blighter's army caught between the Cloudspine, the Ire River, and Tharsis, the legendary forge of the Trough. With the Deceiver in possession of part of his being, Soul Blighter no longer has the ability to escape. We will succeed, for to falter now would be to betray those who have gone before us. Monday, April 27th, Tharsis. Soul Blighter has done the unthinkable. With his army scattered in disarray, he fled up through the Eye of Tharsis and into the very bowels of the earth. I can hardly blame him. The sight of Ulrich hacking his way through the enemy, Balmung flashing in his hand, caused many of our own men to stand aside in awe. If it were anyone other than Soul Blighter, I am sure we would just wait outside the volcano until they had been roasted alive or had succumbed to the poisonous vapors. Unfortunately, he has survived worse, and we must follow him. None of us are foolish enough to believe that Soul Blighter fled because he fears us. If he plans on dying, it will not be quietly or alone. Ulrich believes he has deliberately chosen this place for his final stand. Whether or not he will be able to escape the cataclysm he plans to unleash by destroying Tharsis and shattering the Cloudspine must not matter to him anymore. Soul Blighter, like Balor before him, seeks not to conquer, but to destroy, to be master of the unthinking dead in their blasted lands. So Ulrich is gathering all who are fit to enter Tharsis. The walking wounded and those weakened by fighting will not be idle either. They will see to it that what is left of Soul Blighter's army is returned to the earth. And so I hurriedly record my last thoughts before entering Tharsis, and leave my journal in the care of our surgeon, knowing that I may not return, and that it may not even matter. Either we kill Soul Blighter and his minions here, or we die, and the world with us. Monday, May 4th, 7 gates. The fallen lords are dead, and the dark has fled the land. Now we return to the difficult task of rebuilding. It will take many years to restore our cities and recover our farmlands, and this time we will remain vigilant. I have chosen to follow the Emperor and his Heron Guard back to Muirthemne. There is nothing left for me in Strand, the place of my birth. I have become fast friends with Nine Skull Crocodile, the man who has healed the many wounds I received during the assault on Tharsis. He is ancient even by Heron standards, and speaking with him has given me some insight into what has happened to our world. There are laws that govern the workings of the universe that have remained immutable for countless eons. According to these laws, the forces of light and dark hold dominion over the world successively, the land belonging in turn to men or to monsters. Each cycle would be presaged by the appearance of a great comet, foretelling the rise of savior or destroyer. Each golden age would give way to one of darkness, when foul things would stir beneath the earth and evil spirits would plague the land. In turn, each dark age would fall to one of light. The evil would pass from the land, just as the comet from the sky. The saviors of each golden age were men who had risen to face the dark and never turned away. They were men of unflinching heroism who would not rest until they had loosened the bloodless grip of wicked things which had dominated their lands. Many of these heroes were doomed to return in the following age as fallen lords, destroying all they had fought so hard to preserve. Although the hero of every age of light is different, every dark age is ushered in by the same beast, a transient divinity that seeks only conflict, the Leveler. And so Tiresias returned as Moagim to end the Age of Reason, and Connaught, the great hero of the Wind Age, returned as Balor to lay waste to the greatest empire the world had ever known. The Leveler was never killed. He was immobilized by sorcery, beheaded, and burned at the stake in the Second Era. 1,000 years later, he was drawn and quartered on the plains before Ilium, the tireless horses dragging the pieces of his lifeless body to the four corners of the world. Again, in the Fourth Era, his body was destroyed by fire, his ashes mixed with salt and buried under the mountains of Kor. Balor, Moagim, and all those before them wore the mantle of the Leveler. When I stated that Balor was vanquished but 60 years ago, Nine Skull nodded thoughtfully. Soul Blighter was not the Leveler. He may have been if he had survived into the next millennium, but in his attempt to force the cycle, he perished, and almost certainly will suffer at the hands of those who set it in motion. It is even conceivable that because of his actions, the cycle has been broken, but we cannot be sure, at least not for another 940 years. Nine Skull chuckled, saying that with a little luck, he may still be around to see. He told me about old Muirthemne, describing it with words that seemed out of place coming from such a grizzled warrior. He spoke of its many spired palaces and monuments, and the grand bazaar during each year's harvest. When I told him that I wished I could have seen the city at the height of its power, he said I might see it in my lifetime. Then he told me that next year the Heron Guard will be reinstating the septennial tournament to fill out their ranks. Men of bravery and warriors of renown from every corner of the empire will gather to compete for the honor of joining them. I will be there.